The phone call came on the brightest morning of my life. Sunlight poured through the glass walls of my office, painting golden lines across the polished floor. Outside, the city was alive with movement. Cars streamed through busy streets, people hurried toward their jobs, and everything felt exactly as it should. I had just signed the biggest contract of my career. Years of struggle, sleepless nights, and relentless determination had finally paid off. Then my phone rang. I almost ignored it. The number wasn't saved in my contacts, and I was already late for another meeting. But something made me answer. The moment I heard her voice, the world seemed to stop. A voice I hadn't heard in nearly 15 years. A voice that belonged to a little girl who once sat beside me under an old oak tree. A voice that carried memories I thought I had buried forever. The voice belonged to Maren Whitlock. And the first thing she said made my heart forget how to beat. She told me it was time to keep my promise. Before we continue, take a moment to like this video, comment below where you're watching from, share this story with someone who believes in kindness and second chances, and subscribe to Storyverse for more emotional stories that stay with you long after they end. I stared through the office window while her words echoed inside my head. A promise. I knew exactly what promise she meant. Because some promises never truly disappear. No matter how many years pass. No matter how far life carries you. Some promises remain hidden deep inside your soul, waiting for the day they return. When I was 10 years old, my world was very different. I lived in a small town surrounded by green fields and endless summer skies. Life was simple. My family didn't have much money, but we had enough to survive. My father worked long hours repairing farm equipment, and my mother managed everything else with a strength that seemed almost magical. The house next door belonged to the Whitlock family. That's where Maren lived. She was the same age as me. She had bright eyes, a fearless smile, and a habit of turning ordinary days into unforgettable adventures. Together, we explored forests, built tree forts, raced bicycles through dirt roads, and dreamed about our futures. At 10 years old, the future seemed easy. There were no bills. No heartbreak. No impossible choices. Only dreams. One afternoon, we sat beneath the giant oak tree at the edge of town. The summer air was warm. The leaves danced overhead. We talked about what our lives would look like when we grew up. Maren said she wanted to become a teacher. I said I wanted to build something important. Something that would make people remember my name. Then she laughed and asked if I would forget her when I became successful. I remember shaking my head. I remember feeling absolutely certain. I remember making a promise that seemed harmless and innocent. I told her that if we were both still single when we grew up, would marry her. She smiled. I smiled. We sealed the promise with a handshake. Then we spent the rest of the afternoon chasing fireflies. At 10 years old, it felt like a joke. At 32, it no longer felt like one. Life changed shortly after that summer. My father lost his job. Money became scarce. Stress filled our home. Then came the opportunity that changed everything. My mother received an offer to move across the country for work. Leaving meant abandoning everything we knew. But staying meant sinking deeper into hardship. The decision was painful. Yet necessary. The day we moved away was one of the hardest days of my childhood. Maren stood beside the moving truck trying to smile. I tried to smile too. Neither of us succeeded. Children often believe distance doesn't matter. They think friendships can survive anything. But reality has different plans. At first, we exchanged letters. Then the letters became less frequent. Eventually they stopped entirely. Years passed. School became college. College became adulthood. The little town disappeared into memory. And Maren became part of my past. Or so I believed. The years that followed were difficult. My family struggled financially for a long time. I worked after school. I worked during weekends. I worked through college. While other students enjoyed freedom, I focused on survival. There were moments when giving up felt easier than continuing. But every challenge strengthened me. Every setback taught me something. Every disappointment pushed me forward. Slowly, opportunities appeared. A small internship became a permanent position. A permanent position became a promotion. Promotions became leadership roles. Before I realized it, I had built the career I once dreamed about beneath that oak tree. People called me successful. But success has a strange way of hiding loneliness. While my professional life flourished, my personal life remained complicated. Relationships came and went. Some ended because of distance. Others ended because of ambition. A few ended because I simply wasn't ready. The truth was painful. I had spent so many years chasing success that I forgot how to build a life outside of work. By 32, I had everything I thought I wanted. Yet something was missing. I just didn't know what. Then came Marin's phone call. After our brief conversation, she asked if we could meet. There was something important she needed to tell me. Against my better judgment, I agreed. 3 days later, I drove back to the town I hadn't seen in nearly 15 years. The journey felt surreal. Roads I once knew by heart seemed unfamiliar. Buildings had changed. Businesses had come and gone. But some things remained exactly the same. The old church still stood near the town square. The bakery still filled the air with sweet scents. And the giant oak tree still stretched its branches toward the sky. Seeing it again made my chest tighten. Memories rushed back with surprising force. For a moment, I wasn't a successful executive. I was just a boy remembering the happiest days of his childhood. When I finally arrived at the small cafe where Marin wanted to meet, my hands were trembling. I wasn't sure what to expect. The little girl I remembered no longer existed. 15 years changes everyone. Then she walked through the door. And suddenly every memory came rushing back. She looked different, of course. Older. Wiser. More mature. But her eyes were the same. That fearless brightness remained. The same warmth. The same kindness. The same ability to make the world feel lighter. For several seconds, neither of us spoke. We simply stared. Trying to reconcile the people we remembered with the people standing before us. The silence wasn't uncomfortable. It was emotional. Because both of us understood how much time had passed. And how much had been lost. We spent hours talking. About life. About family. About dreams. About everything that happened after we said goodbye. I learned that Marin had become exactly what she wanted to be. A teacher. She spent her days helping children discover their potential. The pride in her voice was unmistakable. Yet beneath her smile, I sensed sadness. Something was wrong. Something she hadn't told me. As afternoon sunlight filled the cafe windows, she finally revealed the truth. And what she said changed everything. Marin had been diagnosed with a serious illness. The diagnosis had arrived months earlier. Doctors were optimistic but uncertain. Treatment was helping. But no one could predict the future. The moment she told me, the room seemed to shrink. I felt helpless. Heartbroken. Angry at the unfairness of it all. Some people spend their lives hurting others and never face consequences. Yet someone like Marin, someone whose entire life revolved around helping children, was forced into a battle she never deserved. Then she smiled softly. Not because she wasn't afraid. But because she had learned something important. Life is precious precisely because it is uncertain. And uncertainty had inspired her to do something she never thought she'd do. She had decided to reconnect with the people who mattered most. That's why she called me. That's why she remembered the promise. Not because she expected a wedding. Not because she wanted to trap me into honoring a childhood agreement. But because that promise represented something deeper. It represented a friendship that once meant everything. And she wanted to know whether it still mattered. At that moment, I realized something painful. While I had spent years chasing success, Maren had spent years building meaningful relationships. She remembered what truly mattered. I had forgotten. For the first time in a very long time, I questioned every choice I had made. And deep inside, something began to change. Something that would alter the course of both our lives forever. But neither of us knew that the greatest challenge was still waiting ahead. And when it arrived, it would test the promise we made beneath that oak tree in ways neither of us could have imagined. Before we reach the emotional conclusion of this journey, I want to ask something special. Comment, promises matter, if you believe some promises are worth keeping no matter how much time passes. As the sun began to set over the town, Maren and I walked toward the old oak tree together, unaware that the next chapter of our story would force us to confront not only our past, but also the future we never expected to share.